How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Guys, they got a new video out, TMZ, Harvey Levin, about the Celeste Rivas Hernandez case. They're focusing again on David, D4VD, basically a trip that he took in the spring somewhere to Santa Barbara County. I believe, I haven't seen this video just yet, but the way they try to take control of a narrative, the way they try to make things a little bit more confusing when right now we know where things are pointing to. So sometimes these extra videos here could be trying to make things a little bit more confusing when we know that this is pretty much not as complex as people making it out to be. We're kind of at a point where it's starting to go in the direction that everybody knew it was headed. Right now, it's been announced that D4VD is a suspect, but it's not a shock to us. But when you have people trying to still control the narrative for whatever their motive is, they make things a little bit more complex, a little bit more mysterious. When to be honest with you, I really don't think it's that complex. And for this person to come out now and do another video after the video he did a couple of days ago, where basically there was no homicide, and Dave wasn't a suspect, and then the next day, boom. Again, just trying to get ahead and control that narrative, because I believe they knew that something was coming out and they wanted to get ahead of it. Same thing here. They know a lot of people are going to be focusing on that trip he took in the spring. And again, it's not so much about when the body was discovered, but rather when the body was placed. But sometimes, guys, when they're looking to control the narrative, but they know the narrative is a bit simple, they try to make things complex, try to add a little mystery to it. And also that gets them the clicks. Let's not lie. Oh, there are other people involved, or this is more complex. Because eventually when we start seeing things going into the direction that we want, because that's exactly where all the evidence is pointing, that's exactly where the story is headed, because that's where the evidence is saying the story is headed, then all these other little clickbait things tend to not work anymore, because we know exactly what we're waiting for. So we can kind of at certain points understand, oh, that's BS, that's BS, that's BS. Oh, yeah, that actually makes sense, because that seems to be in alignment with the narrative that we already have been expecting. So what they do is to keep the clicks, because I'm sure it's about clicks too. I mean, this is a big, he's got some notoriety, D4VD. So I'm sure a lot of people were clicking. They added some complexity to it, some mystery, and that gets the clicks. So now they keep alive the mystery, or they create a mystery in the hopes that we continue to click. And that could be part of it too. But let's see what he has to say. I haven't seen this full video yet.
Now, I'm also told that logic is not a big part of this case, because a lot of it doesn't make sense just in terms of everything that happened. I want to talk about the mystery still in this David investigation. We broke the story yesterday that David is viewed as a suspect in the death of Celeste Rivas. The big mystery centers around something that we have now confirmed absolutely as true, that the LAPD has some tracking information where they claim that David took this mysterious trip to a very remote area of Santa Barbara County.
Hey, guys, I just got to rewind it, because how does he say something is absolutely true and then goes ahead and says what the LAPD claimed? It's like, why do you start off with something that we're expecting to be factual and then try to make it a little bit more tentative? Is it because that maybe it is something factual, but now it's about David? So let's just, be careful what we throw out there. We don't want to mess with the narrative that we're trying to control, because it looked like he just said absolutely true.
It's true that the LAPD have now confirmed absolutely as true that the LAPD has some tracking information where they claim that David took this mysterious trip to a very remote area of Santa Barbara County. in the middle of the night in the spring of 2025. Now, that is months before the body was discovered in Los Angeles.
Yeah, months before the body was discovered, but remember, it's about the body being placed. So watch these little, sometimes with TMZ, it looks like they're going one way, and then they put these caveats in that kind of discredit everything that was said before. It's like the giant but, B-U-T. It's like, okay, I get what you said, but whatever you say before the but really doesn't matter. And I kind of feel when they speak, that's kind of what it is. They say something, but then they put a but, and then it kind of minimizes or pushes the narrative back into the direction that they want it to head. So it's like they put the information out there, but then they go ahead and do their best to maintain the narrative in the direction they want it to head into.
In the spring of 2025. Now, that is months before the body was discovered in Los Angeles in a trunk. I don't think it's hard to connect the dots. And he stayed there, by the way, for several hours. So I don't think it's hard to connect the dots that one of the things they seem to be looking at is whether Celeste was killed then and he buried the body there or left the body there in some way. If he did that, then the question would be, why would somebody, whether it would be him or somebody else, remove the body from Santa Barbara County, which is 100 miles away from LA, and bring it to Los Angeles, and then put it and leave it in a trunk on a well-traveled street, only to be found after the car was abandoned?
So, guys, he did all that to put doubt. That's what he's doing there. He's asking a question. To be honest with you, at the end of the day, he's a suspect because the body was in his vehicle, his car. That's pretty much ultimately, in my mind, would have made him an initial suspect. Now, if you notice this, he's trying to still put doubt by trying to put this narrative where, well, why would someone put the body there, then drive it 100 miles? Okay, the LAPD, I'm sure, will figure that out. But this right here, I think, is an attempt. I think what he does is he tries to build mystery, doubt, and then puts a quick little line in, maybe a quick little sentence that goes in the opposite direction, in the direction he doesn't want it to go.
If he did that, then the question would be, why would somebody, whether it would be him or somebody else,
there it is,
remove the body from Santa Barbara County, which is 100 miles away from LA, and bring it to Los Angeles, and then put it and leave it in a trunk on a well-traveled street, only to be found after the car was abandoned? That's the part that doesn't make sense. And I think that
interesting, his choice of words. So he's very careful with the words he chooses. He didn't like the word put, but he liked the softer image of leave. I thought that was an interesting choice of words. Just want to go back and say that he corrected himself. He didn't want to put the word put. He switched it to leave.
And then put it and leave it in a trunk on a well-traveled street, only to be found after the car was abandoned.
So it's whatever, it could be minor, but when a person first says put in the trunk and then instantly changes it to leave it in the trunk, that shift can be telling. Put suggests an action they took, while leave sounds more passive, as if it was already there or not there responsibility. In sensitive cases like the D4VD investigation, that kind of correction can look like someone's trying to distance themselves from the act they originally applied. So it's crazy how he corrected himself for a reason on there, guys.
And then put it and leave it in a trunk.
Let me
and bring it to Los Angeles, and then put it and leave it in a trunk on a well-traveled street, only to be found after the car was abandoned. That's the part that doesn't make sense. And I think that's it.
So I wonder if there's also a slip too. Wonder if there's a slip too. Wonder if he just made a slip. Guys, I'm just gotta look. I gotta hold on a second.
In a trunk on a
what about if he slipped and he basically just said that the body was put in the trunk when it returned back to, when the car returned back to the residence. Because he didn't say drive and leave it there first. He said put. So maybe there's a Freudian slip. Maybe that's when the body was put. Watch.
Else. Remove the body from Santa Barbara County, which is 100 miles away from LA, and bring it to Los Angeles, and then put it and leave it in a trunk on a well-traveled street, only to be found after the car was abandoned. That's the part that doesn't make sense. And I think that's, at least what I'm hearing, that's something the LAPD is really looking at.
So look before that. And that's the part that doesn't make sense. So he puts the doubt out there, and then he covers it up by saying that's the part that LAPD is looking at. But he already put the doubt in. He put the doubt in the moment he said, and that's the part that doesn't make sense. So he's already trying to put some thoughts in your head, and then slowly he covered himself. But LAPD is looking into that.
But I believe they have a theory. I don't know what it is, but based on our information, they have some theory about if the body was buried in Santa Barbara County or left in Santa Barbara County in some remote area, how it came back to Los Angeles. And that may also explain why we are...
Who's saying the body was buried? Like, we're thinking maybe that's where the act of taking her life happened, not the burial of the body. That's a twist. I mean, all of it, we think that if that was the case, based on that could be a chance where he probably could have committed to the act that could have ended her life. But where are we getting buried? Why? That wouldn't make sense if he buried her there and then unburied her. Why does he keep saying that she was buried there and then later they took her, or he took her, whoever took her to back to LA? Where's buried come from? I don't think a lot of us are thinking buried her there, because we know where she ended up. I think a lot of us are thinking that if D4VD is a suspect, it's probably because he may have done something to her at that remote area. No one mentioned buried. So I think he's running away from the narrative that could paint D4VD as the aggressor. He's still trying to maybe push more of leaving the body as opposed to putting the body.
Theory about if the body was buried in Santa Barbara County or left in Santa Barbara County in some remote area, how it came back to Los Angeles. And that may also explain why we are told the LAPD believes that David would have had help. And now I don't know whether that help.
And by the way, the help may add to the mystery, because that would be the next thing now also is who helped them. So that could also be for clickbait too. Because, I mean, is it possible David could have done this on his own? Probably. You know, you don't necessarily need two people here, but this adds to a bit of mystery.
Would be taking the body from Santa Barbara back to LA. I don't know. But that to me is the logical way of connecting the dots. Now, I'm also told that logic is not a big part of this case because a lot of it doesn't make sense just in terms of everything that happened.
Guys, it makes sense to us. So let's not make this more confusing as it is. We know where we're all looking. He knows where we're all looking. So let's not get more confused by just keep on saying it's mysterious. It's not logical. I think a lot of the stuff here is pretty straightforward.
But based on this Santa Barbara trip, you know, it seems that the LAPD's operative theory is that Celeste was killed in the spring of 2025. The body not discovered until around September of that year, of this year. Now, the other thing...
And guys, the word theory. He keeps on throwing out the word theory. You know, that's, I don't know if that's to question what's being brought up by LAPD, but operative theory. And then again, we already know it's not about when the body was taken, but, you know, when the life was taken, but rather when the body was placed in that frunk.
covered until around September of that year, of this year. Now, the other thing that's interesting is there has not been a formal cause of death determined by the medical examiner, nor has the LAPD received the toxicology report. So they can't say that this is a homicide and David is a suspect.
That's not true. You don't know what dialogues are happening between them before the official report. So even though an LAPD did say he was a suspect, it's coming from other news sources that have people that are probably a little bit better at reporting objectively. So we don't know. It may not be a report, but we don't know what they're talking about beforehand. But I think he could be a suspect without that too, because a dead body was found in his frunk. So why can't he be a suspect?
So they can't say that he received the toxicology report.
Suspect is not a finding of guilt.
They can't say that this is a homicide and David is a suspect because they can't definitively say now that it's a homicide. Their operating theory, we know, is that it is a homicide, but the coroner, the medical examiner, has not said that yet, nor has the medical examiner delivered toxicology to LAPD.
First off, you don't know what conversations are happening behind the scenes, Harvey. We may not know or see a report, but you cannot say that they haven't had those discussions. You don't know that. People talk behind the scenes all the time. And I think he knows that that's hard to kind of stand by because, of course, you always could have conversations behind the scenes. So then he's going to say real quick about relationships. And basically, and I know that the medical examiner's office, I saw this part, and the LAPD may not have a good relationship. So he tries to build the context to go with the BS that they can't say that. You don't know what discussions are happening behind the scenes. And I think he catches himself, and then he tries to talk about maybe a strain between the two departments.
What I'm told is the relationship between the medical examiner's office and the LAPD is not the greatest, because now we're 2.5 months in since the body was discovered, and still the LAPD doesn't know A, cause of death, B, what the toxicology shows. And what I'm told is this kind of underscores not a great relationship where the medical examiner is particularly cooperative with the LAPD.
What I'm told by who? I mean, that goes back to the narrative. Guys, if this guy's not minimizing every day and protecting the narrative that they originally put out there or started putting out there as the case progressed, this is really not about Celeste Rivas Hernandez. This is really about D4VD.
2.5 months isn't unusual for and I hate to use the term, run-of-the-mill homicide case, but this is a very high-profile homicide case, and a lot of times that can be accelerated. It doesn't seem to be accelerated here.
So basically, he admits that it could take a while, but it should have been accelerated. It wasn't. It takes a while. It takes a while. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, all because it's high profile doesn't mean it's going to get accelerated. The body was badly decomposed. So it's funny how he says, and this is his definition of basically explaining why there's a strained relationship. So the medical examiner would basically say, yeah, I don't like LAPD, so I'm going to make them sit on all their requests. I don't think that works that way, Harvey. I mean, we still have to be professional. But it's funny how there's the backtracking here.
Unusual for and I hate to use the term, where the medical examiner is particularly cooperative with the LAPD. 2.5 months isn't unusual for and I hate to use the term, run-of-the-mill homicide case. So
it's not unusual there, but now he's got his caveat, because he's got to put doubt in. So he still says, he still gets this point out, but then he puts more emphasis on where the doubt is.
But this is a very high-profile homicide case, and a lot of times that can be accelerated. It doesn't seem to be accelerated here. So there is no formal determination of cause of death. There is no toxicology report. There is no formal label of suspect, because you can't call somebody a suspect until you know that it's a homicide.
So, I mean, look at that. No formal label of suspect. Look at the words. No formal label of suspect. You don't know what LAPD knows. You don't know. and you're the one that keeps on pushing for whatever it is to create your narrative, pushing and rushing them, trying to still create your own narrative. But at the end of the day, you don't know what they know. You're not in the loop. You've been told by who? So you're not in the loop. I don't think you're really in the loop. If I was LAPD, I wouldn't trust you with any information right now. So again, a dead body found in someone's car, if that was any one of us, we'd be automatically labeled a suspect, and for good reason.
There is no toxicology report. There is no formal label of suspect, because you can't call somebody a suspect until you know that it's a homicide.
Let me see something. So, the body is found in someone's car. That alone gives police enough reasonable suspicion to treat that person as a suspect, regardless of whether the medical examiner has finished determining the official cause of death. The cause of death helps with charges, not with identifying a suspect.
But again,
guys,
we can tell you that investigators in robbery homicide are viewing this as a homicide, and they are viewing David as the suspect. But again, we are told they believe he had help. So
guys, just look at this real quick. One last thing. So he goes ahead, puts the thought in that you can't have a suspect because it hasn't been determined as a homicide, which we just said it. And then he quickly says the thought about, but LAPD is doing it, and they believe he's a suspect. But it's like we know where you're going with it, Harvey. This is really upsetting, man. It really is. It is really upsetting. It's so obvious now because I feel he's in desperation mode. There must be something that side has over this individual or over this TMZ thing. In my opinion, I could be wrong.
No formal determination of cause.
Look at this. He starts.
That can be accelerated. It doesn't seem to be accelerated here. So there is no formal determination of cause of death. There is no toxicology report. There is no formal label of suspect, because you can't call somebody a suspect until you know that it's a homicide. But again, we can tell you that investigators in robbery homicide are viewing this as a homicide, and they are viewing David as the suspect.
By the way, he could be a suspect for a missing girl. He could be a suspect for grooming her. He could be a suspect for concealing body. Not homicide may not be the only crime there, but having said that, he could be a suspect for anything. And he literally just said he can't be a suspect unless there's a homicide. There's a lot of other things he could be a suspect for then.
Times that can be accelerated. It doesn't seem to be accelerated here.
It's so
there is no formal determination of cause of death. There is no toxicology report. There is no formal label of suspect, because you can't call somebody a suspect until you know that it's a homicide. But again, we can tell you that investigators in robbery homicide are viewing this as a homicide, and they are viewing David as the suspect.
So now he can't end like that, though. But you see how that was. But by the way, LAPD is looking at this. So he puts the context out there. So it's filtered through, you can't do this, LAPD can't do this. But then he says, but by the way, LAPD is doing this and this, makes them look like they're wrong. But just in case, he's got to give the other butt to change that narrative, because it could be going too far in the wrong direction. So watch the butt.
But again, we are told they believe he had help. So Santa Barbara seems to be a central part of this case, this trip to Santa Barbara, to be continued.
So I think part of it also, guys, is to get the clicks. Sometimes with TMZ, they try to create mystery because they know at one point now we know where we're going. So we're kind of know what our path is, know what we want to view, what we don't want to view, because the narrative is starting to fit where we expected it. So he ends this like there's going to be more people. So he's hoping that maybe people be interested in seeing those people are. So let's click, and to be continued. Let's click. Let's make more money by exploiting Celeste Rivas Hernandez death. That's just my opinion. But it does seem that way, and I'm not the only one that shares that. But I would love your thoughts on this. As always, guys, stay safe.